Hello to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends on what part of the world you're attending. And welcome to the International Conference of Children and Their Families using the Multiple Indicator Cluster Surveys. My name is Ivana Bjelic, and I'm a data processing manager with the mixed team in UNICEF HQ. And I have a great pleasure of chairing today's sessions on nutrition during the conference. I'm also delighted to be joined by my co-chair, Stephanie Kauv, who is a monitoring and evaluation specialist in UNICEF West and Central Regional African Office. And together we look forward to guiding you through today's insightful presentations and discussions on nutrition. During these sessions, we have the following 4 presentations. The first one is on levels, severity, and determinants of stunting in children in Afghanistan, secondary analysis of multiple indicator cluster survey 2022-23. The presentation will be delivered by William Joe from the Institute of Economic Growth, Delhi, India. Following is the presentation on prevalence and socio-demographic determinants in early initiation of breastfeeding in Eastern Europe and Central Asia countries, a multi-country analysis of multiple indicator cluster surveys by Mohammad Nahid Mia and Deepak Kumar from UNICEF Cairo office. Third presentation will be on food insecurity and early childhood development among children 24 to 59 months in Nigeria, a multi-level mixed effects modeling of the social determinants of health inequities by Otobo Uja from Federal University of Health Sciences, Nigeria. And last but not least, the presentation on estimating the rates and predictors of exclusive breastfeeding among infants 0 to 5 months across the 261 districts in Ghana, the small area estimation approach that will be presented by Dr. Gloria Odei Obeng Amoako and Dr. Justina Terwa Owusu from the Nutrition and Food Science Department in University of Ghana. I would like to remind each presenter that they have allocated 15 minutes for their respective presentations. And before we begin, I would also like to cover a few housekeeping points. First, please be aware that this session will be recorded and made available on UNICEF Mix website, the BPI YouTube channel, and the Bristol Poverty Institute website after this event. So by participating today, you consent to being part of this recording. We kindly ask all the participants that you ensure that your name is correctly displayed rather than appearing as a guest. I think we already have that from all the attendees. So in case when you are asking any questions or making comments, we know who they are coming from. All the questions must be submitted through the MS Teams Q&A function. So attendees will not be available to speak or raise their hand during the presentation. If you have any comments, concern, or question, please type them in a MS Team Q&A functionality, and we will try, depending on the time, to cover as many questions as it is possible. For those questions that are not going to be covered during the presentation, we suggest that through the contact details and information provided by presenters, you try to reach out to them, and in case they're available, they can potentially address any unanswered issues. And lastly, we would like to kindly ask everyone to be respectful throughout the conference. All these events are being monitored, and we will reserve the right to remove any attendee whose comments are considered in any way offensive or derogatory. So thank you all in advance for your attention, and we're looking forward to the productive and engaging session. I would like now to move to our speakers and pass on the virtual podium to William, who will be going through the very first presentation. William, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ivana and Stephanie. Thank you so much for accepting the paper under the session. May I share my screen, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
I hope the slides are visible.
They were, and okay, it's coming up again. We can see them again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Uh, so this work is titled Level, Severity and Determinants of Stunting in Children under 5 years in Afghanistan, a secondary analysis of mix 2022-23 data. I would like to begin by thanking my co-authors for this joint work, Atma Prakash, Vani Sethi, Saeed Yaqoob, Melanie Galvin, Zivai Murira, Gustavo, and of course the team who has jointly supported the development of this manuscript. So to begin with, as we know that Afghanistan has been facing several challenges in terms of the geopolitical issues as well as economic instability and natural disasters in the past few years. And this has, as several studies have noted, there has been a considerable level of impact on food, livelihood, and nutrition security in the country. So, given the situation, there have been certain assessments of the situation, but a more comprehensive analysis of the nutritional status, particularly of children, was not available until like we had the multiple indicator cluster survey of 22-23. Uh, Previous to this, the data was, I think, more than a decade old, 2014 period, and we were lacking information. So, in that sense, this was a very important data set which came up and provided a comprehensive view of the nutritional status among children in the country. So we use mixed data and estimate the prevalence and understand the determinants of stunting and severe stunting among under 5 children. And we also try to examine this by different age groups within the under 5 category, especially the first 2 years, and also as the under 5 group as a whole. And we also try to draw some insights on the national, regional, and provincial level prevalences. The three main issues that we address in this work is, first, we try to understand what is the prevalence of stunting and severe stunting under age 5. Then we look at what are the significant predictors, especially the demographic factors and the socio-economic determinants, which are influencing the level of stunting and severe stunting among Afghan children. And thirdly, we also want to see whether diets and complementary feeding as well as breastfeeding, they are having any role in influencing the stunting outcomes among children. Especially we do this for the under 2 years of age. Data is available only for that category for the dietary indicators. So using the mixed data, as we all know, it has been very instrumental in understanding the situation. And this data was collected jointly by the National Statistics and Information Authority in Afghanistan and UNICEF Afghanistan. And it was overall collected under the supervision of the Global Mix team. So the data was collected between September 2022 and February 2023. And it was a post-pandemic period, as we know, and the country was experiencing other kind of natural disasters, including some exposure to earthquake in certain regions of the country, and also economic shocks have been a prominent concern. So overall, the data that we have for the analysis, it includes over 33,000 children under 5, and the sample is representative for different regions as well as the 34 provinces of the country. So we'll look at this data and try to clean it a bit in terms of the missing information on, say, height, as well as for merging certain women and children indicators. So based on the filtering of data and cleaning it, we find overall more than 31,000 under 5 observations, which can be used for the study. And further, if we have to focus on the under 2 years for the dietary diversity indicator, then we have a sample of over 12,000 cases. So for analysis, we look at these two very important indicators in child nutrition: stunting and severe stunting. And this is defined as per the World Health Organization's definition of the indicator using the median growth reference standards. To understand like how they are associated with different variables, we have categorized the different explanatory variables into 4 baskets. The first domain is pertaining to the demographic characteristics of the child, that is like the age of the child, sex, as well as birth order. We also look at available maternal characteristics in the form of like age of the mother, her education level, her exposure to mass media, as well as the interpregnancy birth interval. Important characteristics related to household, which are commonly used in literature. For example, the place of residence, the household size, and access to safe water and sanitation, as well as wealth index, which we constructed using the different household asset variables, are also used. Finally, we also look at the association with infant and young child feeding practices. And specifically, we look at initiation of breastfeeding, as well as the dietary diversity of the child, to understand like how they are influencing stunting and severe stunting in the country. So the different variables were then cross-tabbed, and their associations were examined by different statistical tests, most commonly like the Pearson chi-square, but also for sensitivity, we adopted different methods like the Wilcoxon-Ransom test, as well as like the TP HSD test. They have different properties, and we present that as part of our supplementary sensitivity analysis. We also conduct logistic regression, and which we prefer over other models for binary variable, especially like based on the Bayesian information criteria, where the logistic regression was more preferred kind of a model. We present the results in terms of odds ratio, and further we also do sensitivity analysis. Importantly, we use the stepwise regression approach, because that is recommended for variable selection, and often variables sometimes which are not significant are not taken further for the analysis. So to give a very quick overview of the results, so you will see that in Afghanistan, about 45% children under 5 are stunted, and 22% are severely stunted. So this level is one of the highest in the world. And within the country also, we see a huge variation, especially southern part of Afghanistan. We find that more than 55% children are stunted. So this the problem, the magnitude is quite high. When we look at this in terms of age categories, we find that the prevalence of stunting increases substantially by age group. And this is a phenomena which gives very high value, especially after 2 years of age. Uh, when we look at the prevalence of stunting and severe stunting by the household wealth quintile, as well as the education category, we find that the usual socioeconomic gradient is apparent. But what is more concerning is that the level of stunting is very, very high among the vulnerable households, especially the poorest wealth quintile. Also, it is important to note that maternal education has a very strong association with stunting levels. And those who have not received a formal education, the level of stunting is very high, about 48% among children for mothers with limited pre-primary or no education. If we explore like other dimensions to find where stunting prevalence is notably very high, one very important category is about the marital status of women, where we find that women who are divorced or separated, children there have very, very high levels of stunting. Almost 66%, that is 2 out of every 3 child in that category is actually stunted. Apart from that, the low birth interval of the child is also a very important factor where the prevalence of stunting is very high. Also, open defecation shows a significant level of stunting in those households. These covariates are then actually examined by mutually adjusting them in a logistic regression model. And we find this stepwise regression where the variables are selected. It is apparent that age group is very critical. Like as the child grows, the odds of stunting actually increases substantially for that children who are crossing 2 years of age. And this phenomena has to be stemmed quite early. We see favorable impact of maternal age, and those who are like 15 to 19 years are considerably disadvantaged in that sense that the chances of stunting for those kids will be higher. Then in terms of the wealth effects, we clearly see that poverty is a very big risk factor, and the children who are from low income households, they have a very higher odds of stunting. In terms of open defecation status, we also find that there is a greater risk among those children from those households. A similar kind of gradient is
William, just to
observed in.
inform you that you have 5 more minutes left.
Yes, sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So in terms of odds ratio for the severe stunting, we find a similar thing, but it's notable that birth order, that is higher fertility levels, have a very significant odds of stunting for children in Afghanistan. The summary of the region-wise analysis also shows that birth interval, poverty status, and maternal education are very, very critical factors apart from the age of the child. Same patterns we observe for severe stunting. In terms of diet, which is found to be a very critical factor in understanding nutrition, we see that minimum dietary diversity levels are quite low. It's about 15% for children in Afghanistan. And when we use that in the regression analysis to see its association with stunting, it's clear that children who are fulfilling minimum dietary diversity, they are 34% less likely to be stunted. So diet plays a very critical role in influencing the stunting outcomes. Uh, broadly, like, the analysis is giving us the following salient findings. First is that the level is quite high, as you have seen. Almost every second child in Afghanistan is stunted. Maternal education and household economic status are the most critical determinants which are emerging. And we see that stunting prevalence, it actually starts peaking from age 2 onwards, and it is at a very high level, stabilizing at that. Higher fertility has a very adverse effect on the risk of stunting, and also it implies that higher birth order as well as like short birth interval are critical risk factors. Importantly, like, children with limited dietary diversity are also more likely to experience stunting and severe stunting. So the analysis, although provides so much important insights on the situation, but we have certain limitations in the form of the cross-sectional design of the study that we have. And plus, there are certain other indicators which we would also like to further explore in terms of the maternal health indicators, on which some of the information may not be available in the mixed data. Apart from this, I think the information on diet diversity and its quality can be also explored further to see how it influences the stunting outcomes. So based on our analysis, we have like 4 broad set of recommendations. First is that we need to very strongly work on maternal health services and provide comprehensive dietary support to expectant and nursing mothers in Afghanistan. This will have a very direct impact on stunting. Also, investment in educational programs for women is a very, very critical requirement, as we see it has a very strong relation with nutrition. Further, the continued emphasis on economic support programs is necessary to alleviate poverty, because that is also a very fundamental marker of child's nutrition. And finally, we have to further maintain the safe water and sanitation services to prevent diseases and also uh, exacerbate malnutrition and stunting. So I would like to thank UNICEF Mix for providing us the data for the analysis, and also the UNICEF regional office as well as India country office to help us in the work jointly. I would also like to thank my Institute of Economic Growth in Delhi. Just a brief information on IEG. We are a multidisciplinary center for research and training, and we are working with UNICEF as an institutional partner, and we specifically work on nutrition issues, and have been supporting like the government of India, various state governments on anemia especially. And we have been also working with South Asian countries and providing them data analytics support on maternal and child nutrition. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to your feedback and suggestions. Thank you.
Many thanks for a very interesting presentation and sharing the findings. I would just like to remind all the attendees that it is possible to write your questions to any of the presenters in the question and answer section that you can find on top of the screen. So thank you very much again, William. And we will be moving to the next presentation on prevalence and socio-demographic determinants in early initiation of breastfeeding in Eastern Europe and Central Asia countries. Over to you, Mohammed. Please go ahead, share your screen, and we can start the presentation.
Hi, Ivana. Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you so much. We can see your screen. Just to let you know that the screen though is in mode that is not fully presenters mode, so we can see also the next slide information. I don't know
Okay.
if that's
Now
how
it
you would
is
prefer
okay.
to present. Now it's in presentation mode. Now it's good.
So, okay. So, welcome everyone, and thanks to all, and especially the UNICEF. So, giving us the opportunity to presenting our works. So, the works is titled Prevalence, Socio-demographic Determinants in Early Initiation of Breastfeeding in Eastern Europe and Central Asia countries. So this is basically based on the 9 selected countries from the two region is Western Europe and Central Asia. So this works is done with jointly Deepak Kumar Dey, MNE specialist and UNICEF ICARU, and I am Mohammad Nahid Mia, that I was working in a mixed consultant in UNICEF South Sudan. So the aim of this analysis is basically, we all know that research and studies that's confirm that the early initiation of breastfeeding is lowered the mortality rates, and especially the neonatal mortality, and is also the colostrum, the first breast milk, is very important for the newborn survivals. So this analysis we aim to, so we see that despite the research from the importance of the early initiation of breastfeeding for the newborn, but we find that there is a data gap in base, especially the determinants of socio-demographic determinants of identify the early initiation of breastfeeding, especially those who countries the low prevalence, and because we are striking the phrase of the no one left behind of the SDGs, so we are trying to focus on identify the most vulnerable groups throughout the analysis. So before I going to present the findings, I am going to be share some simple sample selection and distribution of the sample, as well as the technique for data analysis we applied. So in mix, we all know that this is a multi-stage stratified cluster systematic random sampling approach we use for the fused. And after that, the questionnaire of women are used, and you see that in whole of the analysis, we see that nearly 45,000 of women were interviewed is all of the 9 countries. And exclusive early initiation of breastfeeding is basically analysis only captured those who are the children ever breastfeeding. And it is the second category is women who gave live birth in the last 2 years. And it seems that 6,000 and 600 of 3 samples, and where every children is asked for whether they are ever breastfeeding or not. So see the sample distribution of the by the country. So Kazakh Central Asia countries have a higher sample size. For example, the Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, especially the nearly 1,350 sample subsample, and where the Serbia and Montenegro is a very low small sample size, and the Georgia is among the country that have the higher sampling subsample that used for the analysis. So data source and analysis. So multiple indicator cluster surveys 9 countries, 6 countries from Western Europe, Belarus, Georgia, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Serbia with Serbia, and 3 countries from Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan data used for the analysis. So we basically use the round 6 of the mixed data of the each of this country. So our analysis targeted women of the reproductive age who gave live birth in the last 2 years and who ever breastfeeded, where the sample total sample size is 6,603. So we estimate the prevalence of early initiation of breastfeeding, and also the applied the cross-tabular and multivariable logistic regression analysis to see the co-founder factors that influence the early initiation of breastfeeding. So in Stata SBI command we use for capturing the complex circuit design of the mix, and also we use both a normalized and denormalized way to capture the pooled analysis of that. And chi-square test is used for the identify the statistical significance. So outcome variable, as per the WHO definition, that we calculate the early initiation of breastfeeding, that proportion of children born in the last 24 months who were breastfeeded within 1 hour after the birth. And then we categorize this EBIF as a dichotomous variable, where whether yes is taken 1 and no is taken the 0. So we use the potential co-founder is the place of residence is basically the rural and urban, and we categorize the maternal age as a less than 30 years and equal or higher than 30 years in the two categories. And we also use the women formal educational attainment and 0 to 5 years, 6 to 9 and 10 plus years. And we would like to see that whether the women age at first marriage said that have any influence or not, and we are taking this is in a two categories. And the analysis also included whether the household wealth has any influence on the early initiation of breastfeeding, and in followed by whether they wanted their last child or not, child sex, and place of delivery, whether it is in a facility or other places, and type of delivery. This is a vaginal delivery or cesarean section. So before I going to present the findings, we also show some strength and limitation of the survey. So we know that this is the cross-sectional survey, so it's a limit the causal in inference, also risks reserve the causality, and there is also the survey timing. Though some of the survey happening in some years and some is at a different years, so this is also in a challenges, and culture and socio-economic differences and self-reporting bias as well as the weighting challenges. However, despite this limitation, this mix survey has some strengths. So for example, a mix is always using in the same round in the same survey design method. Standard questionnaire, standard training, training, so that the standardized method is applied for the all over the region wherever this mix round is they are going to be do it. So these are the result. So overall, we find that 40%, 47% the new nets were breastfeeded within first hours of birth. But this is the crucial findings. We find that the Central Asia countries are substantially very high rate of the early initiation of breastfeeding. That is 2.6 times higher than the Western European countries. And within the countries, we see that the Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan has a high rate of early initiation of breastfeeding, and while the Serbia and North Macedonia have a very low level of early initiation of breastfeeding. So while we are going to be determine the socio-demographic factors that influence the early initiation of breastfeeding, we presented the result in two ways. One, we would like to see that how it is happening in the Central Asia region and how it is happening in the Western Eastern European countries. So these are more or less the similar, except some dissimilarity. For example, mother's education, cesarean section, place of delivery, and whether they wanted their last child or not is statistically significant determinants on early initiation of breastfeeding. While place of residence, wealth index, child sex, and women age, we don't found that is the important determinants of whether they have initiated their breastfeeding for children is early or not. In a European region, there is a bit different where though there is a similarities. So mother's education as others co-founder is high statistically significant, where wealth index we found a statistically significant in influence on early initiation of breastfeeding. And other than this place of residence, child sex, whether they wanted the last child or not, it is found in a not found as significant determinants of a EBIF. So in Central Asia, we found that whether they wanted the last child or not, it is a significant determinants. But in Europe, we didn't see this is a problem. But here we see this wealth index is an important determinants. But in Central Asia, we don't see that is an important determinants for whether they initiate early breastfeeding or not. So we are trying to adjust this socio-demographic factor with hierarchical logistic regression model, where we capturing the complex survey design. So we found that the odds of EIBF is still, after controlling the other co-founder, there is a 6.3 times higher in Central Asia than compared to the European countries. And so like the bibrate analysis, also we see that education, women age, wealth, delivered at health facilities, wanted pregnancy, and normal delivery. So showed the important predictor of the early initiation of breastfeeding, especially if you see that normal delivery. So those who are delivered in cesarean section are very, very less likely to initiate the breastfeeding within 1 hour. So based on our analysis, also some experience that we are proposing some way forward, that invest in maternal education program to empower women and improve the EIVF rates. And health professional could support early breastfeeding, especially for women delivered at a home, and by a cesarean section, and also those are in the poorest household, and ensuring universal access to quality maternal and child healthcare services to facilitate EBIEF. Engage local community to promote awareness and social norms supporting the breastfeeding initiations. So we're also recommending the further research is needed to explore the linkages with other economic and cultural determinants, especially for as cesarean delivered in the cesarean section. Not only the Europe and Central Asia, the literature also suggested that other countries, and based on my experience is Bangladesh, very low rates of EIVF, those who are delivered through the cesarean section. So I think it could be a very potential research agenda that we need to be identified the reason why when the birth delivered by cesarean section are not able to initiate the early breastfeeding within the one hour. So this is the conclusion. So we observed the EIVF in 9 countries within Eastern Europe and Central Asia, except the lower, except Kyrgyzstan. So we feel that most of the country actually the low rate of the early initiation of breastfeeding, and especially the Eastern European countries is very low rates. Cesarean delivery, it is a very important factor that though are delivered through cesarean section is a very low EIVF rates, and also the education has an important factor that lower education has a low EIVF rates, and household wealth also significantly associated with the low EIVF rates. So Central Asia country has significantly higher odds of EBF compared to the European countries. So this is actually the same result, same factor. So in that we try to see that whether is after adjusted there is a significant change is not in based on the vibrate analysis, but we still found that after adjusting all the socio-demographic factors, so the result is remain same in most of the cases. So I have finished my presentation, and thank you all. Thank you to data analytics team and UNICEF to giving us the opportunity to sharing our findings and analytical thought. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mohammed, for delivering this very interesting presentation and findings. We will be moving with the third presentation on food insecurity and early childhood development among children 24 to 59 months in Nigeria. And over to you, Otobo, for delivering this presentation. Seem to be muted.
Sorry,
we see your screen. Yeah, no worries. We see your screen, and now we can hear you as well.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for being here to attend our presentation titled Food Insecurity and Early Childhood Development Among Children 24 to 59 months in Nigeria, a multi-level mixed effects modeling of the social determinants of health inequities. This work was put together by myself and my co-authors across different organizations, and I'm grateful for the work and the effort that they put to ensure that this work was robust. So just as the background, food insecurity, which has been defined as inability to obtain food in socially acceptable ways, has been a pervasive global health problem. Evidence suggests that food insecurity has negative implications for health and well-being among people. Specifically, estimates from the United Nations Food Agricultural Organization showed that at least 1 in 3 people in 2022 were experiencing or living in households. There's evidence in the literature to demonstrate the link or the connection between food insecurity and childhood malnutrition, which also includes stunting and wasting. There's also growing concern about the relationship or the impact that food insecurity is likely to have on childhood development. And also we know that early childhood development and food insecurity are captured in the Sustainable Development Goals, that's 2 and 4. But what we found was that the link between early childhood development and food insecurity was still poorly understood, particularly in many parts of the developing world. So this is the Early Childhood Development Index 2030, which just came out, which was launched about 4 years ago and was recently introduced into the mics. It's a population-based, population-level measure that aims to capture development outcomes among children between the ages of 24 months to 59 months. And it focuses on the SDG target 4.2.1, which is access to quality early childhood development and early learning opportunities. So this slide just contrasts the ECD, the original ECDI, which has 4 domains across physical, social, emotional, learning, literacy, and numeracy domains, against the new ECDI, which was introduced 4 years ago, and basically across three domains: learning domain, the health domain, the psychosocial well-being domains. And these are the different items that are cut across, that are within each of these population level measures. But importantly, we note that the original ECDI focused on children 36 to 59 months, while the ECDI 2030 focused on children within the ages of 24 to 59 months. So that's the difference between both of them. But in terms of the evidence gap, like I said, the impact of food insecurity on early childhood development outcomes has relatively been understudied. While there's some research in the developing world, there's limited research, particularly in the developing world. Also, there's paucity of evidence on this relationship, given the new Early Childhood Development Index, which was introduced 4 years ago. We searched the literature and couldn't find any studies that have used these measures. But importantly, we see, according to this paper, that there's need for more studies to look at the link between food insecurity and early child development in low and middle income countries. And that formed the basis for our research. So based on all we've said so far, we aim to address the following research questions. First of all, our goal was to quantify the variation in early childhood development among children between the ages of 24 to 59 months in Nigeria, and understand how much of this variation is attributable to socio-ecological factors. Our second objective was to determine the extent to which food insecurity was associated or is associated with early childhood development among this group of children in Nigeria, and then to also determine or explore what the key sociological factors are that are associated with early childhood development among children in Nigeria. For the theoretical underpinning, we used the Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, which basically hypothesizes that outcomes and behaviors at individual levels are influenced by several factors across several socio-ecological spheres, and we can see the different layers that comprises the ecological systems theory. So that was what we used to guide the theoretical underpinning of our study. So basically, our study was a secondary analysis of cross-sectional data from the MIC 6 from Nigeria, which was conducted in 2021. Our sample was comprised children under the age of 5 years, but we further restricted our analysis to boys and girls within the ages of 24 to 59 months to capture, given that the SDGs in relation to early childhood development focuses on this group of children, so we limited our analysis to this group of to this sample. To do so, we merged the child data set, which contained early childhood development, with the household data set, which has information on household food insecurity. And this is just a flow chart showing how the participants were selected for the study. We see that in Mike 6, the total number of children in the survey was 31,103. And after applying our inclusion and exclusion criteria, we see that the unweighted sample size was 11,494. And this was based on a complete case, including cases that had complete observation for the early childhood development, and then for household food insecurity, as well as other factors that were excluded. We can see them on the right-hand side of the screen. The final weighted analytic sample size was 12,112. So that's when we applied the survey weights included in the Mike's data set. Our primary exposure variable was household food insecurity in the past 12 months, and this was based on the food insecurity experience scale, which was further computed to categorize food insecurity as no food insecurity or mild food insecurity, and then moderate food insecurity or severe food insecurity. On the other hand, the dependent variable was early childhood development, which was based on the 20 items included in the ECDI 2030. And we operationalized our outcome variable as a binary variable, which was with children on track versus not on track. The outcome model was children not on track. These are the covariates that were selected for inclusion in the analysis, and this is also based on the ecological systems theory, where we classified, we basically use 3 levels. At the child level, we look at the factors to the left-hand side. We see age, sex, disability status, and health insurance coverage. And then at the family household level, and then at the wider systems level. So our selection of these variables were based on the theoretical relevance as published in the literature, and also based on the biologic plausibility in terms of the outcome, exposure outcome relationship, and then also the availability of these variables in the data set. The empirical strategy was, like I said, based on a complete case analysis. All the estimates all analyses were weighted using the sample weights included in the Mikes per the recommendations in the guidelines of the multiple indicator cluster survey. To explore the factors associated with early childhood development, as well as the association of food insecurity with early childhood development, we used the multi-level logistic models with random intercepts. And this was based on the fact that the multiple indicator cluster survey data set, it has a hierarchical structure. And so to be able to generate robust estimates, we felt and we believe that using a multi-level approach would be ideal. And doing so, we were able to estimate the odds ratios along with the 95% confidence intervals in terms of for the fixed effects. And then for the random effects, we estimated the intra-class correlation coefficient, the median odds ratios, and the percentage change in variance. The factors that were associated, that were adjusted for in the model were based on the variables I previously showed, the figure across the child level, family level, and then the community level characteristics. So based on our findings, based on our analysis, we found that at least approximately 71% of households reported experiencing moderate or severe food insecurity in 2021. Of these, we also found that 1 in 3 children lived in households experiencing moderate food insecurity, while 1 in 2 children lived in households experiencing severe food insecurity. In terms of early childhood development, we also found that while approximately 54% of children were developmentally on track, we see that about 46% were developmentally off track. When we ran a bivariable analysis between household food insecurity and early childhood development, we see that with increasing food insecurity, the likelihood of experiencing delays or being developmentally off track increase. So we see that, and that's the red box now, we see that the levels of the prevalence of children being not on track increased between the non and then the moderate, and then the same for severe food insecurity. To address our first research question, looking at the variation in early childhood development, we
Just
see
to let you know,
that
5 minutes.
there was significant variability in terms of early childhood development outcomes, where approximately 22% of the variation in early childhood development was attributable to communities. And then when we move across models, we see the changes in the variations across early childhood development. So for the second research question, based on the best fitting model, which is model 4, that adjusted for individual, for the child level, the household level, and the community level characteristics, we found that food insecurity was not associated with early childhood development. And this contrasts with model 1, which was the crude odds ratios, where we found an strong association between moderate and food insecurity and early childhood development. But after including all the variables in the model, we did not find any significant association. And these are, for our research question number 3, exploring the socio-ecological factors associated with ECD, we see that age was significantly associated with being developmentally off track. Same was for children with a functional disability. Religion was significantly associated with delays in early childhood development, as well as household wealth index, and then place of residence and the geographic region of residence. We see the differences in terms of the significance of the association. So the limitations of this analysis were based on the fact that the measures, both food insecurity and early childhood development, were reported by, the mother or the caregiver, and may not actually reflect food insecurity in the children. So, that was a limitation. And then we observed that Mike 6 in Nigeria did not have anthropometric data, and so we could not include that in our analysis. Perhaps if we would have, it would have informed or influenced the conclusions of our study. We also are not sure to what extent our findings are generalizable to other domains of early childhood development that were not captured in the ECDI 2030. And then we could not establish the timing and duration of food insecurity on early childhood development. The implications based on our findings is that there's need for further subnational research. There's also need to disaggregate the estimates based on the different domains and subdomains of ECDI to see whether indeed this may vary. Also, in terms of early childhood development, we wonder whether childhood hunger or nutrition insecurity or food insecurity may reveal different estimates, and which would indeed be a strong predictor. For programming, we believe that there's need for age-appropriate multi-level interventions to improve early childhood development in Nigeria, given our findings. And then since our findings suggest geographic clustering, there's need to also consider contextual effects when implementing programs to improve early childhood development. So the take-home message is that a considerable proportion of children in Nigeria were developmentally off track in 2021. The relationship between food insecurity and early childhood development in Nigeria, based on the ECDI 2030, is inconclusive. There's, however, need to strengthen and expand interventions to improve food insecurity, to ensure food security in Nigeria, and also ensure children are developmentally on track. With that, I've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. And we will be moving to the 4th presentation of the day on estimating the rates and predictors of exclusive breastfeeding among infants 0 to 5 months across the 261 districts in Ghana, the small area estimation approach that will be delivered by Gloria and Justina. So over to you, Gloria. And Justina, please, you can start the presentation and share the screen. We can see your screen, but I'm afraid we don't hear you. I don't know if you're... Gloria, you seem to be muted.
Yes.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone from Accra. This is Gloria Odey Obeamwako. I'm here with my colleague, Justina Sewa Owusu. We did this paper with another colleague called Simon Onilimo, and we present estimating the rates and predictors of exclusive breastfeeding among infants 0 to 5 months across the 261 districts in Ghana, the small area estimation approach. Breast milk, an important source of nourishment for children, reduces risks of childhood morbidity and mortality, especially when exclusively fed to children less than 6 months. However, only half or less than half of Ghanaian children less than 6 months were fed exclusively on breast milk the day preceding the mixed 2017-18 survey.
I'm so
Currently,
sorry to
data.
interrupt, Gloria. We don't see your slides moving, just to inform you about that. I assume that you wanted to move with the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, just then let me stop and start. Can
Certainly.
you? Okay, sorry about that.
No worries at all. We didn't have
So
time.
should I share again?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Okay. Thanks for telling us. Can you see?
Yes, we can see. It is not in presenter's mode. Yeah, okay, perfect. Now it's presenter's mode and it's moving the slides. Thank you so much.
Right.
Please continue.
Thank
We will
you.
restart at the time, just so don't worry. You have still 15 minutes to finish the presentation.
Thank you very much. So I was saying that breast milk is an important source of nourishment for young children, reduces risks of childhood morbidity and mortality, especially when exclusively fed to children less than 6 months. Less than half of children in Ghana, less than 6 months, were exclusively fed on breast milk the day preceding the mixed 2017-18 survey. Currently, data on exclusive breastfeeding are aggregated at national and regional levels. Disaggregated exclusive breastfeeding data in smaller geographical areas are unavailable. And also, we don't have context-specific data to inform interventions which are relevant for the different contexts. We also need data to inform resource allocation and to track the SDG targets. To address this gap, our paper reports on the rates and predictors of exclusive breastfeeding for infants 0 to 5 months across the 261 districts in Ghana using the small area estimation approach. So the findings will provide local level evidence useful for targeting exclusive breastfeeding intervention decision-making in Ghana. So what we did was we had two data sets, the mixed data as well as the population data. We identified common variables in these data set and harmonized the data to have a pool data for the analysis. We also recategorize the enumeration areas and clusters in the two data sets into the current districts and regions of Ghana, because currently we have updated our regions or created new regions and districts in Ghana. So we estimated the prevalence and predictors of exclusive breastfeeding using logistic regression. Non-significant variables were eliminated using the stepwise regression analysis at a significant level of 0.05. The model goodness of fit was assessed using the area under curve of the receiver operator characteristics. We estimated that at 0.701. We conducted our analysis in Stata. So our results. We had a pooled sample of 74,258 children less than 1 year, drawn from the 16 regions of Ghana. The pooled sample consisted of 891 children aged 0 to 5 months and 73,367 children aged 0 to 11 months available in the mixed and the population census data sets respectively. Nearly half of the sample were females, and more than half of them lived in urban localities. Over half of them resided in households headed by males, and most of the households had no formal education, and only 7.11 of them attained tertiary level of education, and about 39.7% of the household owned mobile phones. So we assessed how the sample was distributed among the regions in the two data sets, and we found that Asante region had the highest proportion of sample in our data, in the mixed data, and as well as the population data. And the least region was Ahafo and Savannah in the population census. Majority of the sample lived in urban areas in population data compared with the mixed data. So the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding, that is when a child has not received any other thing apart from breastfeeding, the day before the survey was 42.9%. It's very similar to what was reported in the existing mixed reports, because of course we used the same data sets. And in our model, we had to conduct or analyze the predictors of exclusive breastfeeding. So our first model, the two most significant or most important predictors were households who had heads who had tertiary education, and also if the household owned a mobile phone, there was a higher likelihood of exclusive breastfeeding. And geographical area where a child lives also mattered, central Greater Accra, and eastern Ashanti and western North. Children who live in these regions had a reduced odds of breastfeeding. So this was our first model, and then we went on to check what variables would be significant in the second model after the stepwise analysis. And Household heads' educational level still was significant, especially those who had tertiary level and ownership of mobile phones were most significant predictors. And a child living in Western region had a reduced odds or chances of being exclusively breastfed. Bono and Bono East, though especially Bono had a higher odds of breastfeeding, they were not significant. So the most important aspect of our analysis was to estimate the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding using the mixed data as well as the population data. And this table shows that Western region had the lowest proportion of exclusive breastfeeding. Bono had the highest, as well as Upper West and Upper East, just like it was reported by UNICEF. So what happens when we use the population census data? We also found that Western region had the lowest prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding, and Bono was the highest. And we also saw that Upper East and Upper West also had about 66% of exclusive breastfeeding in those regions. So when we assess the estimates against the confidence intervals of the mixed data prevalence, we found that the population census estimate of breastfeeding fell within the lower and upper boundaries of the confidence intervals of the mixed estimates. So this shows that we can use this estimates based on the population census reliably to predict the prevalence or to estimate the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding in the country. And the most important aspect of our analysis was to also determine the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding at the district level, which is currently not available. So with this approach, we were able to identify the range of breastfeeding, and we found that it varied across the 261 districts in the country. Elembele, one of the districts in the Western region, had the least rate of breastfeeding compared to a district called Jama in the north, Jama North, sorry, in Bono, having the highest. So that could explain why Bono region had the highest and Western region had the least prevalence of breastfeeding. And when we estimated the average breastfeeding across the 261 districts, it confirmed the earlier estimate of 42.9%. So we say that exclusive breastfeeding rates disparities persist across the country in the regions. Western Asante and Western North have low rate of exclusive breastfeeding, while Bono, Upper East and West had high exclusive breastfeeding. District levels also show varying exclusive breastfeeding rates across the districts in Ghana, highlighting the district with the lowest rates of breastfeeding, needing targeted intervention to increase these rates. Given that exclusive breastfeeding rates were higher among children who lived in households with mobile phones and also households who had their heads with higher level of education. Using mobile phones for exclusive breastfeeding education and awareness could be a promising approach to increase breastfeeding rates, especially those with low prevalence. And we would say that we would need to find out why Belen had the least prevalence rates of exclusive breastfeeding in future research. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Gloria. This concludes the presentations that we had allocated for this session. My colleague Stephanie has been gathering some questions. We didn't see a lot of questions coming from attendees. I think that first question that was already asked by Maida, that was for Mohammed, I believe, related to the women who experienced normal delivery versus those who delivered via cesarean section. Was the difference in findings found to be significant? And I think that the question was already addressed, saying that yes, there are significant differences in rates and between the conclusion that there are higher, significantly higher rates of exclusively breastfed children among the women that went to normal delivery. So we have a couple of more questions from our own end for each of the presenters. I will pass it over to Stephanie. We have in total 6 minutes left. Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you, Ivana. Okay. All right. So I have a question to William Joe from Ivana. So what was the data cleaning that was involved in your analysis? Another question. So I'm asking the question one after another, and then you will take your turn to reply. Another question is to Otobo. According to you, what would be the exact reasons for you that the food insecurity and ECD outcomes in Nigeria were inconclusive? A question to Gloria from Ivana is, how is the exclusive breastfeeding estimated or defined in the census if the methodology, as you mentioned, is similar to the mix? William, do you want to start with the question on data cleaning?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for the question. So basically, I think the data which we had.
William, we can't hear.
Hello, am I audible? Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. So thank you for the question. So basically, the data which we had from the mix, it had like quite a few missing observations, and that we had to largely like remove. Although like if we have to present other correlates, so sometimes other dimensions also have to be removed. One of the important aspects was that while merging the women file and with the children file, I think a lot of observations were not actually getting matched. So that was one problematic kind of like sample drop we were observing. So that was something that we had to remove. So that's like potentially losing some sample from the analysis. Other, I think, two aspects which we were not fully able to work on, like we were trying to work on other dimensions of undernutrition as well, including underweight and wasting. But I think there also a little bit more focus on the indicators were required. So hence, like largely I meant by cleaning was to like leave out a lot of information which perhaps could have explained it in a more comprehensive manner. So that was like the thing which I was stating. Thank you.
Thank you, William.
You're mute.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, William, for your answer. So question to Otobo.
Yeah, so I think that first of all, it's not clear. We weren't, it's not clear why we didn't find an association. But like I said, as part of the limitations, the mix 6 in Nigeria did not have anthropometric data. So it's possible that we did not control for other factors that were previously included in other studies. And that may have, you know, perhaps, I mean, it would have been nice to include anthropometric data to see if indeed we would find an association, right? Also, compared relative to other studies, most studies have shown that use the mixed data were based on the original ECDIs. So it's totally different domains from, although there seem to be some overlap with the new ECDI domain. So, that also now creates some, further questions, why do we find an association? What is it that is different with the ECDI 2030 from the original ECDS that is making us not find an association? And of course, we couldn't find previous studies that explored similar relationship because the ECDI was recently introduced. So I think one thing that would be interesting for us to see how other investigators answer this question in other contexts and see what they find and how they operationalize it. Perhaps there's something we need to do differently, but that's what I think.
Thank you so much, Otobo. Thank you so much, Otobo. So yeah, I just wanted to mention I also suspected it was because maybe we didn't use the anthropometric measurement. Just to let you know, as I'm coordinating the new Mix 7 in Nigeria, they are going to include the anthropometric measurement. So I think you could try your analysis in both ways for next time. All right, so Gloria. Question from Ivana about the definition of exclusive breastfeeding in the census and how it is similar to the mix. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your question. The mix defined exclusive breastfeeding as not having given a child water, any other thing except breastfeeding in 24 hours prior to the survey, the day of the survey. It should be day and night, like in 24 hours prior to survey. So in children age 0 to 5 months, less than 6 months. This outcome, this was our outcome variable, and it was found in only the mixed data. The rationale for the small area estimation is that we are merging or we are analyzing a pool data, two data put together, one having the outcome, the other doesn't. The population census data had the lowest level of data that was not collected in the census, the mixed data. So we identified characteristics in both data sets, except the outcome variables. So these characteristics were the variables of the regions, that's the names of the regions, the residence area, that is either rural or urban, the sex of the household head, the child sex, the age of the household head, the level of education, sanitary, that is either improve or unimproved toilets, water sources improve and unimproved, mobile phones, fixed phones, house ownerships. So these were the variables that we could find available in the two data sets. And then we merged them. Mm-hmm. After merging them, we had a pool of sample which we used to estimate. So the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding, our aim was to determine the breastfeeding at the district level, which is not currently available in the mixed data or mixed report. So that is a benefit. The benefit of this analysis is that it gives us an opportunity to have a context-specific prevalence. It helps us to go a little lower than what is available. So that is what we did in this analysis. So the population census data did not have exclusive breastfeeding rates.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for your comprehensive response. Very, very well understood the methodology now. Thank you all, colleagues, for your presentations. We appreciate your time. And we hope that you will continue participating in the conference also tomorrow as attendees. Thank you again, and
Thank you.
have a wonderful rest of the day or the evening. Bye.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Okay.